Hi, welcome to TechCrunch TV. I'm still here with Ankur, Jain, and we're going to talk about one of your beliefs that rather than startups becoming a big San Francisco, then California, then American powerhouse, and then trying and usually failing to conquer markets like China, they should be a multinational startup from day one.
Right.
All of our viewers are going to think this is awful. You need to be in one room. Like, I'm just telling you in advance, you are selling to a hard crowd here.
So look, I mean, everybody around I think even in Silicon Valley, their dream is to become a multinational global conglomerate. You want to start off in Silicon Valley and become the Facebook of the world, right? Problem is, as you know, entering a foreign market once you're an American company is difficult, especially in places like China and India where there's such a significant culture difference, but also a different market and the way you sell products. Now, there's some really cool opportunities that I think we're seeing with the Kairos Society, right? So within Kairos, we have the top young entrepreneurs from around the world. And these guys are coming together and building friendships that'll hopefully last a lifetime. I mean, think about what the world would look like if the most influential people today were best friends 20 years ago, right? I mean, now take that to a global level where suddenly a young entrepreneur from China can be on the phone with a young entrepreneur from the United States, which is so easy today with communication devices, right? And they can say, hey, look, there's a fundamental need for a new form of education in China or in the United States. Why don't we create a product together and start a company that's a quote-unquote multinational startup, which is this new term we'd love for people to start using more, right? I mean, the premise here is that no longer, like you said, are you a San Francisco company building it up and waiting to grow in the US and trying to enter, but from day one, your company has a multinational, multicultural DNA.
Right.
So at its core, it understands what the two markets are. It understands that the product you're developing can be applicable to two different countries. Best of all, you've got a guy on the ground in both countries. Now, obviously, face-to-face is huge.
Right.
And having people in your office in both places will be key, but you don't have to replicate everything like you would if you had to move into the country later. And there's other benefits, right? So now that you have two people in two countries working on this, you can identify the synergies in China and the United States to create an inherently better product. And because that product is multicultural and multinational, you can actually from day one be selling in two different markets. So you actually can have higher growth from day one. It also kind of hedges your bets in case one market is better than the other. But the really exciting implication of this is that if we can tie job growth and GDP growth in two countries to single private companies, we're almost privatizing diplomacy, which is something I think every Silicon Valley would
I love the
right?
idea of privatizing diplomacy because, those clowns in Congress. But I mean, look, this is not necessarily a new idea. A lot of people have talked about doing this, and people have looked at it from, a more outsourcing angle, which I think is a little bit different than what you're saying. And, I mean, I can think off the top of my head of at least a dozen startups who've tried this, and it just has not worked. And they feel like there's something about being in the same room together, being in the same building. I mean, if you trace back, most of the big startups that have become multi-billion-dollar companies, there's some moment of real-world serendipity where someone, ran into someone on the street. They were hanging out in the same circle. There was a party, and people were. I mean, the roots of TechCrunch were Mike having, cookouts and entrepreneurs mingling in the backyard and working on things. I mean, I've seen companies started in hotel lobbies. I mean, I just think there are certain things great communications are great, but it's almost less about communications and being able to get on the phone with someone. It's about that trust and friendship. Yeah, well, it's trust, it's friendship, it's language, it's culture, it's local market. I mean, I think you're just kind of saying communication and glossing over a ton of problems.
So let me take a step back. I mean, the key here, and the reason it's failed so many times in the past, is that you don't have that trust and inherent friendship with the people that you're working with. So somebody will say, there's a cool guy in China that someone introduced me to, let's start a company together. What we're doing with the Kairos Society that is trying to change this paradigm is creating a really special, close-knit community that's pre-selected of really the world's future leaders. And by bringing them together face-to-face at places like our Global Summit, where we're having 350 of these top students with 150 CEOs, political leaders, science leaders, just spending 2 days together at the United Nations and New York Stock Exchange, you build that friendship and that rapport. And that trust is what's going to drive it forward once you leave. And it's not that you're not going to see each other on a frequent basis still. It's just that it's very different than finding a random person in China to start a company with. And if you have that trust and friendship, you can play off of each other and still ideally, and this is an experiment. We're going to figure it out and see how it works, right? But But the implications are huge if this does work this time around. And if you can build those genuine friendships between future leaders, even if the multinational startups don't succeed today, 5-10 years from now, they will continue to grow as the world becomes more flat.
How do you select the world's future leaders? Because most of the most impressive
total
entrepreneurs
surprises.
I know were total misfits that no one would have suspected they would have
I mean, so by no means am I saying we have every future leader in the world. There's no way to predict that. There are certain things that you can find, I think, amongst young leaders that do qualify and characterize these amazing people we see today. And it's, we went out and met with as many different entrepreneurs as we could to say, excuse me, back when you were in college, what were you like? What was the thing that drove you? What got you excited? I think you'll find a common ground that all these guys in Silicon Valley, they hate taking no for an answer. These guys find a way to get things done. These are people, when you ask them generally what they want to do, they want to change the world. I mean, in whatever way that is, they want to change the way something is done. They're persistent. We're looking for people who have shown a track record of not just talking but getting things done. And every one of our students has done some incredible organization in the past, whether they're running it today or not. And that kind of mentality of let's find a solution to a problem and do something about it is what drives them. Now, will all of them succeed? No. Are we missing a lot
but they shouldn't.
They shouldn't.
I mean,
failure is a key part. Exactly.
Risk, yeah.
We should be failing often and failing fast and learning from that and keep moving forward. But by building that support network, it's kind of like what they do at these top Ivy Leagues, right? They create a network of top people who, by nature of being together, not by nature of the school itself per se, but by nature of a bunch of smart, passionate people sitting in the same room, great ideas flourish.
How do you bridge language?
So we actually have a general requirement that people need to speak at least semi-fluent English.
I mean, that right there, I would tell you, you are cutting out most of the world's future leaders.
We cannot tap into all of them just yet. And we're hoping, there's a lot of people that we're trying to talk to figure out how can we bridge that language barrier more effectively, right? And if I could solve all the problems, it'd be amazing.
Right.
But one of the things we're trying to do is find these technologies that translate language instantly and effectively. And that technology has advanced rapidly. I mean, I've seen some stuff recently where I'm speaking in English and it's coming out in Mandarin on context-based translation. So it waits for the sentence to finish, figures out what I'm trying to say, and it can distinguish between orange and orange based on the context. So I think give it a couple years, and as I talked about, the world will become more flat, not just from an economic perspective, but from a cultural perspective. And that's when these multinational startups can thrive, that's when these friendships can thrive, and hopefully we can integrate more and more.
Right. So why not, along with requiring that people be semi-fluent in English, require that Americans be semi-fluent in another language?
We've thought about that. And quite honestly, we're looking at considering something like that. It's just a matter of, we're 2.5 years old.
Right.
We're a startup.
That's maternity.
We're a startup in and of ourselves,
2.5 years old. That excuse doesn't fly here.
We're a startup in and of ourselves, which makes it so much fun. This is all student run. And if you look at, we are a multinational startup ourselves. I've got a fantastic team. Our team is based in Beijing, Delhi, Amsterdam, London, LA, Boston, and Philadelphia. And that's our team. And we get together once or twice a month from around the world, and we hang out, and we have a great time, and we really just try and figure out where the next steps are. And so we're figuring this out as we go, and it's been an exciting journey. But any of these ideas that you have, let's make sure we crank them in,